The snowstorm came suddenly, and Elara thought that made sense. Everything in her life happened suddenly. Being rejected, being forced to leave, and now, it seemed, freezing to death in the mountains. She had been walking for 6 hours since the Frostpeak Pack kicked her out. Her thin coat did nothing to protect her from the freezing wind. That felt like knives cutting her skin. Her platinum blonde hair, so light it was almost white, blew wildly around her face in the harsh wind. Her skin was already so pale that people whispered she was cursed. Now it had turned a little blue from the cold. Her gray-blue eyes could barely see through the thick snow that seemed like it wanted to blind her. Elara knew she was going to die. The rejection ceremony happened this morning, and by tonight she would be a frozen dead body in the wild. There was something poetic about it, she thought. Born unwanted, died alone. A life that began and ended with rejection. Her parents left her at the Frostpeak Pack's border when she was 3 days old. The pack healer said she was wrapped in a thin blanket with nothing else, no note, no explanation. Just a too pale baby with too pale hair left in the snow, like garbage someone wanted to throw away. Too pale, too strange looking, too much of a reminder that not all children are blessings. The pack took her in because the moon goddess's law said they had to. They raised her in the orphan house with the other unwanted children. She never knew love, never knew belonging, never knew anything except that she was different. And being different was dangerous. The other orphans at least had stories about their parents and reasons why they were given up. Elara had nothing but questions nobody could answer, and a look that made people uncomfortable. When she became an Omega at 16, there was a tiny bit of hope. Omegas were valuable, even strange-looking ones. They could have strong babies, could help calm the pack, could be useful in ways that went beyond appearance. But as the years passed and no one claimed her, that hope died slowly and painfully at 23. She was the oldest unclaimed Omega in the pack, an embarrassment they couldn't figure out what to do with. Then Garrett solved their problem. Garrett was a medium-ranking beta who was assigned to mate with her. Because no one else would volunteer, he took one look at her on their wedding day, at her too pale hair and too pale skin and too pale eyes, and he publicly rejected her in front of the entire pack. "I won't mate with a ghost," he said, his voice loud and clear so everyone could hear. "She's unnatural. Cursed. I want a real Omega, not whatever this thing is. Look at her. She's barely even a wolf." "I refuse," the pack agreed enthusiastically. The Alpha banished her immediately, not even giving her time to gather proper supplies or say goodbye to the few people who had been kind to her. Just a coat, the clothes on her back, and orders to be gone before sunset or she would be killed for trespassing. So she walked into the mountains, into the coming storm, because where else could she go? Now, 6 hours later, Elara was lost, frozen, and dying. The blizzard had erased any sense of direction. She couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Her legs were giving out. Her body was shutting down from the cold. She couldn't feel her fingers or toes anymore. This was it. This was how she would die. Alone and frozen, exactly as everyone had always expected. But then she felt it. A pull. An instinct so strong it was almost like someone tugging her to the left, away from the path she had been following, toward what looked like a straight cliff that would surely kill her if she tried to climb it in this weather. Elara had learned to trust her instincts over her 23 years. They were the only thing that had kept her alive in a pack that didn't want her. They warned her when Garrett was coming so she could hide. They guided her to the safest routes through dangerous territory. So despite being exhausted, despite it seeming impossible, she followed the pull with the last of her strength. And there, Hidden behind a rock formation that had been completely invisible from any other angle was a cave. Relief flooded through her so strongly that she almost fell right there in the snow. Shelter. She had found shelter. The moon goddess hadn't completely abandoned her. Elara stumbled toward the cave entrance, already imagining relief from the wind, when she heard it whimpering, low and pained. Coming from inside the cave, every survival instinct screamed at her to run. Injured animals were dangerous and unpredictable. Whatever was in that cave could kill her. But the whimpering came again, weak and desperate. And Elara's healer heart, the one her caretakers at the orphan house had carefully trained, because even unwanted children needed skills that might make them useful, someday overrode her caution. She stepped into the cave and stopped dead wolves. 12 of them, all enormous, all with pure white fur that seemed to glow even in the dim light coming through the cave entrance. They were ranged in a rough circle, and they were clearly in trouble. Some were shivering violently despite their thick winter coats. Some had visible injuries with blood matting their white fur. All of them looked like they were freezing to death despite being built for cold climates. Elite Guard. Elara recognized the signs immediately. These wolves were too large, too well-built, too organized in how they positioned themselves, even while injured, to be anything else. The way they arranged themselves showed military training. Warriors who kept their formation even in crisis. They were elite soldiers from one of the great packs, probably caught in the same blizzard that had trapped her. She should leave, should find another cave, another shelter. Elite guards served powerful alphas, and those alphas didn't look kindly on strangers interfering with their property. She had heard stories of omegas being killed for lesser offenses, but as Elara stood there, watching them suffer, watching their difficult breathing, and seeing the blood on the cave floor, she knew she couldn't walk away. "I'm going to help you," she said softly, her voice barely heard over the wind howling outside. "If you'll let me." The 12 white wolves all turned to look at her at the same time, a coordinated movement that confirmed their elite status. Their eyes were various shades of blue and silver, pale and striking, and they were watching her with an intensity that made her want to back away. But she stood her ground, meeting their gazes steadily, waiting for them to make the first move. The largest wolf, a massive animal with ice blue eyes and a presence that screamed alpha, made a soft chuffing sound. It wasn't aggressive. It was almost welcoming. Permission granted. The others relaxed slightly, their defensive positions easing, and Elara took that as acceptance to enter their space. She spent the next hour carefully checking their conditions. 3 had minor injuries from what looked like a rock slide, deep cuts and bruising that needed cleaning and wrapping. 2 were showing signs of severe cold despite their thick coats, with shallow breathing and heartbeats that were too slow. 7 others were exhausted but relatively uninjured, though clearly pushed beyond their limits, and none of them could seem to shift back to human form, which meant whatever had happened to them had either drained their energy completely or injured them badly enough that shifting was impossible. "Okay," Elara said, thinking out loud as she always did when she was solving problems, a habit from years of working alone. "First priority is warmth. We need a fire, but I don't have any way to start one, and I can't see anything burnable in here. Second priority is shelter from the wind. This cave goes deeper. I can feel the draft pulling from further in. Third priority is treating injuries properly, but that'll have to wait until we're all warm enough that our hands work, and I can see what I'm doing." She looked at the wolves, who were still watching her with that unnerving, coordinated intensity. "I'm going to go deeper into the cave and see if there's anything we can use. Firewood, supplies, anything." Stay here and try to conserve your heat. Huddle together if you can. Elara went into the darkness, using the strange instinct that had led her to the cave in the first place to guide her steps. The pull was still there, tugging her deeper, promising safety if she just trusted it. She found a chamber about 50 feet in, smaller and more protected from the wind. And there, in a corner that showed signs of careful organization, was evidence that people had stayed here before. A stack of old firewood, dry and ready to use. Flint and steel wrapped in oiled cloth. Some old supplies that had been left behind by travelers or hunters, including a few worn blankets and a clay pot for melting snow. Relief made her want to cry. Someone had used this cave before and had left supplies for future travelers, and those supplies were going to save all their lives. Elara gathered everything she could carry and brought it back to the wolves, who had started to huddle together for warmth in her absence, their training clearly including cold weather survival tactics. "Look what I found," she said, showing them the supplies with a smile she couldn't hold back. "We're going to make it through this, all of us." Starting the fire took 20 minutes and nearly all her remaining strength. Her hands were so cold she could barely feel them, and the flint kept slipping. But finally, after countless attempts and a lot of quiet cursing, a small flame caught on the kindling. Elara fed it carefully, building it up with the skill her caretakers had taught her, until there was real heat coming from it. The wolves crept closer immediately, drawn by the promise of warmth like moths to light. "Come on," Elara urged, gently positioning them in a tighter circle around the fire. "We need to share body heat. It's the only way we'll all survive this. I know you're trained warriors and you probably hate showing weakness, but right now survival matters more than pride." She worked carefully, positioning the most cold wolves closest to the fire, checking their breathing and heart rates as best she could with numb fingers. She placed the injured ones where she could easily reach them for treatment. Then she treated the injuries themselves, using strips torn from her already thin cloak as bandages, cleaning wounds with melted snow from the clay pot, working with determination despite her exhaustion and the pain in her frozen hands. The largest wolf, the one with the commanding presence, watched her work with those intelligent ice blue eyes. When she came to check his injuries, she found deep cuts along his ribs that he had been hiding. "You should have said something," she scolded gently as she cleaned the wounds. "Leaders don't do anyone any good if they bleed out from stubbornness." The wolf made a sound that might have been sheepish, and Elara could have sworn she saw amusement flicker in those pale eyes. By the time she was done treating everyone, it was full night, and the blizzard outside was raging harder than ever. The howling winds sounded like screams. Elara fed more wood to the fire, carefully rationing their supply. It would have to last all night at minimum, maybe longer if the storm didn't break by morning. She settled down among the wolves, who had rearranged themselves without any clear communication into something that looked like a living nest with her at the center. Their body heat combined with the fire was finally starting to drive away the deadly cold. Elara felt herself begin to thaw, and with the thawing came bone-deep exhaustion that threatened to pull her under. But she couldn't sleep. Someone needed to keep the fire going. Someone needed to watch for signs that any of the wolves were getting worse. Needed to monitor their breathing and check for fever or infection. So Elara stayed awake, feeding the fire carefully, checking on each wolf periodically with gentle hands, and singing softly to pass the time and keep herself alert. She sang the lullabies the caretakers had sung to the orphans when nightmares made them cry. She sang work songs she had learned in the pack's kitchens where she had worked for her keep. She sang traveling songs and healing songs and anything else she could remember from her limited experience. Her voice was soft and sweet, trained by years of singing to herself for comfort, and the wolves seemed to find it soothing. Several of them rested their massive heads on her lap or against her sides, and she stroked their fur absently as she sang, marveling at how soft it was despite the blood and dirt. "The north wind blows cold, and the snow falls deep," she sang, her voice barely more than a whisper but carrying in the quiet cave. "But the fire burns bright, and the pack wolves sleep. In the darkness we're safe, in the storm we're warm. Together we'll weather this frozen storm. The moon goddess watches from starlit sky and keeps her children safe and dry." The largest wolf, the one with ice blue eyes who she was becoming certain was the alpha of this group, watched her throughout the night. He never slept, she realized with growing concern. He was keeping watch just like she was, protecting his pack even when he could barely move, even when his own injuries needed rest to heal. The mark of a true leader. Elara met his gaze and smiled softly. "You're a good leader," she told him quietly, not wanting to disturb the others who had finally managed to sleep. "Your pack is lucky to have you. I hope your alpha appreciates you, whoever he is. I hope he knows what you sacrifice for his territory." The wolf's tail thumped once against the cave floor, a deliberate movement, and something that might have been amusement flickered in those intelligent eyes. There was something almost human in his expression, something that made her wonder if he understood far more than she was giving him credit for. As the night wore on and exhaustion made her barriers crumble, Elara found herself talking to the wolves, filling the silence with stories about her life. She told them about growing up in the orphan house, about learning to make herself small and quiet and invisible so she wouldn't be noticed, wouldn't be a target, about the other orphans who found families while she remained unwanted year after year, about watching them leave with tears of joy while she pretended to be happy for them, and died a little inside each time she told them about her wedding day and Garrett's rejection, about standing there in front of the entire pack in a borrowed dress, while he declared her too disgusting to touch, about walking into the blizzard with no destination and no hope, fully expecting to die and half relieved at the thought. "I don't know why I found you," she admitted as she checked the injuries of a white wolf with silver blue eyes, wrapping the bandage around his foreleg with careful precision. "But I'm glad I did. At least this way I won't die alone. At least this way my last act was helping someone, even if that someone is a pack of wolves who'll probably forget about me the moment this storm ends and you can shift back and call for your people." The large wolf with ice blue eyes made a sound low in his throat that definitely sounded like disagreement. It was almost a growl, but not aggressive, more like a firm denial of what she had said. Elara smiled and scratched behind his ears, marveling at how he leaned into the touch like any pet dog seeking affection. "It's okay. I'm used to being forgotten. I'm used to being the girl no one wants. It's better than being remembered as the ghost girl, the cursed one, the Omega who was too pale to love. At least if I'm forgotten, I'm not actively hurting anyone with my existence." The wolf made that disagreeing sound again, louder this time, and several of the other wolves stirred, their ears twitching toward her. She got the distinct impression they were listening even in sleep, and that they didn't like what she was saying. Dawn came slowly, the gray light filtering into the cave inch by inch like it was reluctant to disturb the peace. The blizzard was finally breaking. The wind was dying down to occasional gusts. The snow was falling in lazy flakes instead of the driving sheets that had nearly killed her. Elara had made it through the night, and more importantly, all 12 wolves were still alive. Their breathing was steady, their body temperatures had stabilized, and even the injured ones were showing signs of healing faster than she would have expected. Relief made Elara dizzy. She had done it. She had actually done it. She had saved them all. She was checking the last wolf's bandages, making sure nothing had loosened during the night, when she felt it. A shimmer in the air, a surge of power that made her small omega wolf press against her consciousness. In automatic submission, the 12 white wolves were shifting. Elara scrambled backward, giving them space as their forms blurred and reformed. The transformation was beautiful in a way that hurt to watch. Nature and magic combining to reshape reality. 12 men emerged where the wolves had been, all of them large and powerfully built, all with the same platinum blonde or white blonde hair that marked them as northern wolves. They were naked, which made Elara immediately look away, her cheeks burning hot with embarrassment. "Sorry," she stammered, staring very hard at the cave wall. "I should go. I'll leave you to get dressed and stay," commanded a deep voice. And there was so much authority in it, so much power, that Elara froze mid-turn. "Please," she slowly turned back, keeping her eyes carefully fixed on faces, rather than anything lower. The 12 men had arranged themselves into a protective formation, with the largest at the center. He was looking at Elara with those same ice-blue eyes, and now that he was human, she could see just how imposing he truly was. He was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, with broad shoulders and a warrior's build that spoke of years of training and battle. His hair was platinum blonde, so pale it was almost white, and fell to his shoulders in thick waves that somehow managed to look deliberately styled. Despite sleeping in a cave, his eyes were the palest blue she had ever seen, like ice in sunlight, like glaciers at dawn. He had a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of pale stubble, sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, and the kind of face that belonged on ancient statues of warrior kings. His body was covered in scars that told stories of countless battles survived. He looked like a Viking, she thought, like something out of the old legends her caretakers used to tell, like a god of war made flesh. And there was something about him, some quality of power and presence that she couldn't name, that made her wolf want to submit and bow and offer her throat in surrender. "My name is Drake," he said, his voice still carrying that note of command but gentler now, more controlled. "I'm Alpha King of the Northern Territories. These are my elite guard, the 12 finest warriors in my kingdom, and we owe you our lives." Elara's breath caught in her throat. Alpha King. She had sheltered the Alpha King himself and his elite guard. The most powerful wolf in the entire territory had spent the night in her lap, while she sang him lullabies and called him a good boy. The ruler of everything north of the Great Mountains had let her pet his ears and check his injuries, like he was a common pet. "I didn't know," she said quickly, panic making her words tumble over each other. "I mean, I knew you were elite guard. I could tell from how you moved and positioned yourselves, but I didn't know you were. I'm so sorry if I did anything inappropriate. I just wanted to help. I didn't mean any disrespect." "Inappropriate?" One of the guards, a younger man with silver white hair and gray eyes that sparkled with mischief, laughed warmly. "You saved our lives. You found shelter when we were lost and dying. You built a fire when we were freezing. You treated our injuries with supplies you had to find while you yourself were injured and exhausted. You stayed awake all night keeping watch so we could rest safely. That's not inappropriate. That's extraordinary." Another guard, this one with hair the color of fresh snow and eyes like chips of blue ice, nodded eagerly. "Most people would have run the moment they saw us. Elite guards are intimidating even when we're healthy. You saw 12 massive injured wolves and your first instinct was to help. That takes courage most warriors don't have." Drake was still watching her with that intense gaze, and Elara felt like he was seeing through her skin straight to her soul. What's your name? Elara, she said softly. I was from Frostpeak Pack. Until yesterday. Was? Drake's eyes narrowed dangerously, and suddenly the temperature in the cave seemed to drop. What happened yesterday? Elara hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding it. He was the Alpha King. If he wanted to know, he would find out anyway. I was rejected by my intended mate. He said I was too pale, too strange, cursed by the moon goddess. The Alpha banished me immediately. I was trying to find somewhere to go when the blizzard hit. I got lost, and then I felt this pull, like something was calling me, and I found the cave. Found you. They banished you for your appearance? Another guard, this one with darker platinum hair and eyes that burned with anger, sounded outraged. That's barbaric and completely illegal under Northern law. Every pack in this territory knows that appearance-based rejection is grounds for Alpha challenge. It doesn't matter, Elara said quietly, wrapping her arms around herself. I have nowhere to go anyway. No family, no pack, no one who wants me. I was just walking, hoping maybe I'd find somewhere that would take me in, or that I'd die quickly and it would all be over. Drake stood in one fluid motion, and even naked he managed to look regal and commanding. Several of the guards quickly moved to give him a cloak, which he wrapped around his waist with practiced efficiency. You found shelter. You found us. And I think that was exactly what the moon goddess intended. He moved closer, and Elara had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. I've been searching for 2 years, he said quietly, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. Searching for an Omega who meets very specific requirements. She has to be compassionate enough to help strangers without expecting reward. Strong enough to survive impossible situations without breaking. Brave enough to face danger without flinching. And she has to have the gift of Pathfinder. Elara blinked. Pathfinder? What's that? The ability to find safety, to sense the right path even when all seems lost, Drake explained, his ice blue eyes never leaving hers. It's a rare gift, one that shows itself in moments of desperate need. You found this cave in a blizzard when you were dying. You found the supplies we needed to survive. You knew exactly how to keep us alive without any training or guidance. That wasn't luck, Elara. That was your gift awakening to save you, and through you, to save us. He dropped to one knee in front of her, and every other guard immediately followed suit, creating a scene of such formal respect that Elara's mind couldn't quite process it. I've been searching for a Luna, Drake continued, his voice carrying to all the guards now. Someone worthy of standing beside me, of helping me lead the Northern Territories. Someone who sees those in need and helps them without hesitation or calculation. Someone who leads with heart rather than power. And I've found her. I've found you. Elara stared at him in shock, her mind refusing to accept what she was hearing. You can't be serious. I'm nobody. I'm a rejected Omega with no pack, no family, no training in leadership. I'm too pale and too strange, and everyone says I'm cursed. You're beautiful. Drake interrupted firmly, his voice carrying absolute conviction. Your hair is like moonlight on snow. Your skin is like the first frost of winter. Your eyes are like the sky at dawn. You look exactly like what a Northern Luna should be. You look like you were made for this territory, for this climate, for this role. And more importantly, you have the heart of a true leader. You put 12 strangers before yourself when you had every reason to be selfish. You stayed awake all night to keep us safe when you could have slept and let fate decide. You asked for nothing in return, expected nothing. Just gave everything you had because it was right. That's not nobody, Elara. That's extraordinary. That's exactly what a Luna should be. He held out his hand, calloused and scarred from years of battle. Be my Luna. Be my mate. Stand beside me and help me build a territory where wolves like you are valued, not cast out. Where compassion is rewarded, not punished. Where being different is celebrated as a gift, not condemned as a curse. Where no child ever has to grow up feeling unwanted or unloved. Elara's mind was reeling, spiraling, unable to process how big this was. She had gone from rejected and banished to being proposed to by the Alpha King himself. In less than 24 hours. It was too much, too fast, too impossible to be real. I need time, she said, her voice shaking so badly she could barely form words. I can't just. I need to think. Of course, Drake said immediately, lowering his hand but not standing, keeping himself at her level rather than towering over her. You've been through trauma. You need time to process, to heal, to decide what you want without pressure or force. I'm not asking you to accept right now. I'm asking you to come back to my territory, to see what life could be like, to get to know me and my pack before you make any decisions. Is that acceptable? Elara looked at the 12 guards, all still kneeling, all watching her with respect and what looked like genuine hope rather than judgment or disgust. She looked at Drake, at his sincere expression, at the hope blazing in his ice-blue eyes, at the way he was offering rather than demanding. And she thought about the alternative, walking back into the blizzard, dying alone, having her last moments be frozen and afraid and unwanted. Okay, she said softly. I'll come with you. I'll see your territory. But I'm making no promises about being your Luna. I need to see if this is real. First, Drake's face lit up with a smile that transformed him from imposing king to devastatingly handsome man. That's all I ask. Thank you, Elara, for everything, for saving our lives, for giving me hope, for being willing to try. The journey to Drake's territory took 3 days through the mountain passes. The elite guard had supplies hidden at strategic points, including clothes and provisions, which they retrieved once the storm fully passed. Elara finally learned their names and specialties over the journey. Frost was the silver-haired guard who had laughed earlier, the pack's master tracker. Storm, with his darker hair, handled weather prediction and route planning. Ash was their healer, a quiet man with gentle hands who checked her for injuries and frostbite with professional efficiency. River was their scout, small and fast and always ranging ahead. Stone was their strategist, always thinking 3 moves ahead. Wolf was their weapons master, carrying more blades than seemed physically possible. Hawk had the keenest eyesight and served as their lookout. Bear was their strongest fighter, massive even among the large guards. Fox was their spy and information gatherer. Raven was their diplomat. Shadow was their stealth expert. And Drake, of course, led them all. We were on a reconnaissance mission. Frost explained on the first night as they made camp in a much more comfortable cave than the one where they had met. He sat beside Elara at the fire, his manner friendly and open, checking the southern borders for signs of rogue activity. There have been reports of rogues organizing, possibly planning raids. The blizzard caught us in a bad position, separated us from our main supply cache. We should have died out there. Would have, absolutely, if you hadn't found us. The Pathfinder gift. Storm added from where he was checking the weather signs. It shows itself in times of desperate need, both yours and others. You needed shelter, and we needed rescue. Your gift led you right to us at the exact moment when waiting even another hour would have meant death for some of us. That's not coincidence. That's destiny. Elara was still processing the idea that she had a gift, that she was something more than just a cursed omega no one wanted. She had always thought her instincts were just survival mechanisms, developed from years of navigating a hostile pack and learning to sense danger. But according to Drake and his guards, she was a Pathfinder, one of the rarest gifts the moon goddess could give. On the second night, as they made camp in a sheltered valley, Drake sat beside her at the fire. The guards had given them privacy, posting themselves at strategic points around the camp but staying far enough away. That conversation would be private. "Tell me about Frostpeak," he said quietly. "About what your life was like there. I want to understand." So Elara told him everything. About growing up in the orphan house, where children no one wanted were raised together by elderly omegas who did their best, but couldn't give individual love to 30 unwanted children. About her caretakers, particularly old Maya, who had taught her healing and had been the closest thing to a mother she had ever known. About the whispers that followed her everywhere, the way people avoided touching her as if paleness were contagious or her curse might transfer. About being useful enough to keep but never valued enough to love. About Garrett's rejection and the Alpha's banishment. About being given less than an hour to leave or be killed. "I never belonged there," she admitted, staring into the fire. "I always knew I was different. I just thought that meant I was broken, defective, wrong somehow. I didn't know it might mean I was something else, something rare. I didn't know being different could be valuable." Drake's hand found hers, his fingers warm and callous from years of sword work. "You're not broken. You're rare, and rare things are precious, Elara." The wolves of Frostpeak were fools not to see that. "But their blindness is my blessing, because it brought you to me. Will your pack see it?" Elara asked, voicing the fear that had been growing with each mile toward his territory. "Or will they look at me and see what Frostpeak saw? A ghost curse? Something wrong? Will they accept me as Luna? Or will they rebel against having someone like me in a position of power?" "My pack will see their Luna," Drake said firmly, his hand tightening on hers. "The woman who saved their king's life and the lives of his elite guard. The Pathfinder who found us when we were lost and dying. The healer who stayed awake all night keeping us safe. And if anyone has a problem with that, if anyone dares to disrespect you or question your worth, they'll answer to me personally. I've been Alpha King for 5 years, and I've never had to execute anyone for insubordination. But I would. For you, I would." The intensity in his voice, the absolute conviction, made Elara's heart skip. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever thought she was worth defending. When they finally arrived at Drake's territory on the third day, Elara was stunned by what she saw. The Northern Crown's stronghold was built into a glacier, with ice and stone creating structures that glittered in the sunlight like a city of diamonds. Buildings carved from ice itself stood alongside more traditional stone structures, all of it designed to work with the natural environment rather than against it. It was beautiful and alien and unlike anything she had ever seen. The pack that came out to greet them was equally impressive. Hundreds of wolves, all healthy and strong, all with the pale hair and light eyes that marked them as northern breeds adapted to harsh climates. They ranged from platinum blonde to white to silver, from ice blue eyes to gray to pale green. And when Drake announced that he had found his Luna, the cheering was immediate and deafening. Elara was overwhelmed by the welcome. People bowed to her, not with mockery, but with genuine respect. They offered her gifts, traditional northern offerings of fur and carved bone and preserved foods. They called her Luna, like it was already decided. Like her acceptance was a sure thing. An elderly woman named Senna, the pack's head healer and one of Drake's most trusted advisors, took Elara under her wing immediately. "We've been waiting for you," Senna said as she showed Elara to a suite of rooms in the main keep, the ice castle that served as Drake's home and seat of power. "The king has been alone too long. We need a Luna, someone with a healing heart and a strong spirit. Someone who can balance his warrior nature with compassion. And from what I hear, you have both in abundance." Over the following weeks, Elara settled into life in the Northern Crown Pack. Drake courted her properly and traditionally, showing her the territory on long walks, introducing her to key pack members, including her in council meetings and decisions. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel like she owed him anything for rescuing her or offering her a place. She learned that he had been searching for a Luna for 2 years, ever since his parents died in a territorial dispute and left him ruling alone. At the young age of 23, he had met countless Omegas, all beautiful and accomplished and eager to be queen, but none of them had felt right. None of them had the combination of compassion and strength he needed in a partner. "I was starting to lose hope," he admitted one evening, as they walked through the ice garden's crystalline sculptures that caught the fading sunlight and turned it into rainbows. "Starting to think maybe the moon goddess didn't have someone for me. That maybe I was meant to rule alone. And then you found us in that cave, and everything made sense. Every rejection I had given, every Omega who wasn't right, it was all leading me to you." Elara found herself falling in love with him, not just with Drake the Alpha King, but with Drake the man. He was kind to the elderly, spending time with them and listening to their stories. He was patient with pups, often found playing with them in the snow or teaching them basic combat moves. He listened to the concerns of the lowest Omega as seriously as he listened to his council of advisors. He worked alongside his warriors rather than commanding from a throne, his hands as calloused as theirs from training and labor. He was everything an alpha should be, but she was still afraid. Afraid of being rejected again, afraid of not being good enough, afraid of losing the fragile happiness she had found. It was Senna who finally helped her see clearly. "Child," the old healer said one afternoon as they worked together in her medicinal garden, harvesting herbs and roots, "you're letting fear make your decisions, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of happiness being taken away. But let me ask you this. Are you happy here?" "Yes," Elara admitted without hesitation. "Happier than I've ever been in my entire life." "Do you love him?" "Yes." The admission came easily now, after weeks of denying it to herself. "I love him. I love the way he leads with strength and compassion. I love how he remembers everyone's names and asks about their families. I love how he plays with the pups and respects the elders. I love everything about him." "Then what are you afraid of? That he'll suddenly decide you're not good enough?" "Child," Drake pulled her into his arms and kissed her deep and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too," he said roughly, his voice thick with emotion. "From that first moment in the cave, when you didn't hesitate to help 12 strange wolves, when you stayed awake all night to keep us safe, when you sang to us like we were precious, when you gave everything you had without asking anything in return. I've loved you from the very beginning." The mating ceremony was held under the full moon 2 weeks later, with the entire Northern Crown Pack in attendance. Elara wore a dress of pure white fur and ice blue silk that seemed to be made of winter itself. Her platinum hair adorned with crystals that caught the moonlight and made her look like an ice princess from ancient legends. The 12 elite guards stood as witnesses, all of them healthy and whole thanks to her care. their white formal uniforms making them look like an honor guard of winter soldiers. When Drake marked her neck, claiming her as his mate before the moon goddess and all witnesses, the pack howled in celebration. The sound echoed through the glacier, through the ice palace, through the entire territory, a song of joy and belonging and new beginnings that Elara felt in her very soul. Years later, when young wolves would come to Luna Elara feeling broken or unwanted, feeling like they didn't fit anywhere, she would smile and tell them her story about being rejected and banished, about walking into